Free Practice 2 is about to get underway here for MotoGP's Indonesian Grand Prix. Good morning wherever you are in the world, if you're watching us live on Twitch or you're watching us on the YouTube delay. Well done for getting up or staying up. It's the final 30-minute practice session before the qualifying segments get underway. The green light is on. We are underway now. And there is Fabio Quartararo, 10th in the championship. We've already got the running order for who's going in Q1 and Q2. So this session, the last 30 minutes to get the bikes set up into qualifying. And then, of course, later on today, the Tissot sprint procedure will be go. The fans all in attendance, all ready to go, looking absolutely superb. And no sign of rain. We haven't had rain here for 7 months at the moment. So the track absolutely beautiful. Ground temperature, that's the track, at 51 degrees. Air temperature 32 degrees, 65% humidity, 13 km/h wind speed blowing in from the east-southeast here at Mandalika. And the riders heading out onto the track now as well. Let's catch up with our team at TNT Sports, Gavin Emmett.
That creates another complication. The strange thing, Michael, Neil, good morning to you both. The strange thing about Bagnaia is he looked out of sorts, didn't look in great shape yesterday, but he says, oh, the braking was brilliant, it was absolutely fine, it was only electronics we're having a problem with. It didn't look like that, did it?
No, I think we've seen this before, haven't we, where a rider's in a situation where he's struggling a little bit, and he doesn't really want to admit it to himself. It's almost like he's lying, Gav. You know, who'd have thought it? And we can sort of see through it, and I think that everyone can see through it. He's not a million miles off. And the question is, can he turn it around? Well, we've seen it so many times this year where he has a mediocre Friday, and then Saturday comes, and that factory team find all the answers to his issues.
A lot of people yesterday, Michael, when we spoke to them at the end yesterday, were talking about this track. No bumps, that's the main thing. It's in perfect condition as regards that. However, as we can see clearly from the wider shots, there's quite a narrow racing line, and that racing line offers such different grip compared to the rest of the racetrack. And when you're having a slight issue, like Bagnaia was yesterday, that he said the electronics were just not quite dialed in right, then you just get ever so slightly offline and it ruins everything.
Exactly that, Gav. He's not technically lying, because his braking performance may be good, as in actually the performance from the brakes and how the chassis feels, but electronics are so aligned with the braking. You adjust your idle speed to match the rear wheel, match the speed of the front, stop it locking up too much, and it may well have just been pushing him in that little fraction, takes you off the clean line, the blacker line that you see out there. And obviously you've seen him running on so many times yesterday, so they'll dial that in. And it is a little bit the new surface, because they would free it up whenever you've got bumps and the rear's kicking off the ground. Now they can tighten it up a little bit more, use more stopping performance from their bike, so they'll be shutting down that exhaust valve, really bringing the idle down on the corner entry.
So there's a few of them going into it now for the first time on their lap times. Soft tyres are the call at the front, with soft rear tyres as well. Medium rear for Jorge Martin, hard front for Marco Bezzecchi, Brad Binder, and Erebashini Marquez and Johan Zarco. 21 riders riding. Of course, Alex Marquez ruled out after still having injuries on his ribs. Now we're watching the combined time, but if we click to the current to see who's fastest in this individual free practice session, it is Zarco with a 132.696, throwing that with Bagnaia. Miller, Augusto Fernandez, Johan Mir now goes 4th, so times are improving already.
We had a chat myself with Jack Miller last night about Ducati and their electronics, and he says that's the big difference. Having switched to the KTM, he said KTM actually is a fantastic bike, and they've made big strides this year. In fact, it turns better than Ducati, is effectively what he was saying. But he just said their agility when it comes to electronics is second to none.
Yeah, he used this as an example, saying during the session I could come in on the Ducati and I could say, look, turn 3, I need a little bit more power in second gear. And they could do it there and then. He said with KTM that would take time, and we wouldn't be able to adjust that, believe it or not, during the session. So you can imagine then, these guys don't get that much track time, and it really shows what you can do on a Ducati, how in a 30-minute session like this is, how you can try maybe 3 or 4 different things where KTM basically start with their base electronic package.
You've been slightly humble in that one of the other things you said was that Ducati have been working with Magneti Morelli so long in Grand Prix racing that the hovering cursor that comes up when you open the telemetry package is the Fila Ducati that you used to ride.
He was laughing, wasn't he? But he was saying, funnily, that's how old the system is, and we've got so much information, and that enables us, enables Ducati. They know it all, inside out. The program, it's like they've built that program. So, yeah, it's old.
And then KTM having to build it, and that's other problem. We've seen that with Honda and Yamaha, haven't we?
Really interesting times coming through on the board right now. Take a look at the full screen here, because we've got Maverick Vinales fastest overall. Martin has just bumped it into 4th, but now he's dropped down to 7th. Maverick Vinales, a 1:31.754. He goes top of the board, so they're all finding amazing grip early on this morning. We had an uninterrupted Moto3, Moto2 session just before this, their 3rd practice. Our 2nd practice, technically 3rd, but, you know, free practice too, rather than the practice that we had yesterday, which was the 60 minutes that decided the running order for Q1 and Q2. We're having an interesting run now, and Bagnaia is only a 10th off that of Vinales through the 3rd sector, and he was fastest, as you can see, sector 1 and sector 2. Bezek is being followed by the 89 out there as well. So all in all, it's looking to be a very smooth, interesting run at the moment. Can Bagnaia go top? Comes across the line and does so with a 1:31.702.
On anyone, it was almost half a second quicker than anybody.
Yeah, it was like we were back in Barcelona. If you remember there, he absolutely dominated that weekend, winning both the races on a different level. And what's similar about this track? Well, it's a lower grip track because, like we've said, it doesn't get used a lot, so the track's a bit slippy. The Aprilia and his riding style seems to work, and also the flowing nature of this track. There's only a couple of really slow corners. This is one of them.
And that's one of the problems around here. They saw from Jorge Martin, you get ever so slightly offline. That's where Joan Mir crashed yesterday. He was following Bagnaia, who had that little bit of a moment in there. You get a millimetre
Zarco, that time cancelled.
Maybe a millimetre's a bit too tight, but, you know, it's not far, is it? You have to get off and you have to pick the bike up.
The problem is you can take a risk and commit, but you know that you're playing with fire. It is a 50-50 chance of the grip's going to be there. The safe option is pick it up and run it straight on. Obviously, you can't afford to do that in the race. The riders hope that the track will evolve, that they can get away with it a little bit more. So, yeah, today in qualifying, they'll take the extra risk. They'll lean on in there. But you seen yesterday, it was catching out so many riders without doing a lot wrong. Front just lets go.
Can I be boring just for a couple of minutes in this one and talk tyres? Michael, Michelin have brought something. We talk about Buriram and Austria and extreme conditions. There's more people just running off the outside of the racetrack there at turn 10. But there's another tyre being brought here that hasn't been brought before, and we're not sure whether it's necessarily the right one. It's all to do with the casing, explain?
Yeah, they've gone stiffer with the construction, the carcass, so the front hard option only has the stiffer front, but on the rear side, they tested it in Misano, I believe, and the riders did believe it was an evolution, it was the direction to go, and they've brought it here. They've just brought their usual compounds and applied it to that stiffer construction. So I think the feedback is pretty positive. It will deal with the surface temperature that is created a lot better, so it should hopefully manage the front tyre pressure increases with the hard option, and then likewise on the rear, it'll manage the consumption and the overload the tyres would sometimes get.
So we'll keep an eye on that then, but we are seeing mega improvements on lap times here. We'll just adjust the camera because Aleix Espargaro goes top with a 1:31.028. Martin second. Vinales has dropped down into 7th position now as well. So the times really are improving an awful lot. It's so cold in this commentary box as well, so jumpers and hoodies are definitely required to keep up. But this is a very interesting session because there is just so much to look forward to. There's so much intrigue as well to see who's going to have the overall grip, who's going to have the overall best strategy between the two of them. Aleix Espargaro with a 1:31.028. Lap time cancelled for Bagnaia due to exceeding track limits. Martin, 3rd fast at the moment. Not a very good first sector, but there is time improving. There are areas that can change and probably will change going into tomorrow as Martin runs it wide and loses out on some lap times and almost interferes with Alicia Spargo's lap time. Something was coming up on official information. You don't know it, I don't know it either because it's not been said on the TV screens. But there is something looking good so far. So back on track, Friday leaders, Alicia Spargo is fastest by 0.3 of a second from Bagnaia, who was left 16th after his scare on day one time attack as well. Pole goes up to 9th at the moment as well. So there are still times being found out there on the circuit.
Like when you go to any other normal track in Europe, they're used pretty much every day. So the track's clean almost anywhere you go on the track, but that's not the case here.
And it's not through lack of trying, is it, Neil? We were out there and they were washing the place, like every single corner with jet washers.
Yeah, they've done everything they can. There's been a lot of effort. They want this Grand Prix to be a success, especially with, you know, last year the track was falling apart. Obviously, we had the thunderstorm. It was a bit of a mess. It was far from ideal. They've put a lot of effort in here in Lombok, and it's a great atmosphere. Everybody, all the locals absolutely love MotoGP. They love us being here. But yeah, they need this event to be a success. And unfortunately, like I say, we are hampered that we've got that little thin strip. I did my lap yesterday on the BMW. I actually did 2 flying laps, which is rare. I normally only get 1. And the only way I can explain it, what it feels like, is it's like you go out and you're on a completely wet track and there's a narrow, dry line and you're trying to work your way around that, and as soon as you get off it, it's a horrible sensation. Even at the steady speeds I was going at, I could feel the massive difference between grip and no grip.
Follow my leader kind of stuff, it sounds like.
Unfortunately, but so what does that mean? Well, it means even more, qualifying is going to be even more important this morning. You have to qualify. I'd always say you've got to qualify in the first 3 rows. I'm going to say now you've got to qualify in the front row.
What about even
into turn 1's going to be dangerous?
I was going to say turn 1, because pole's not on the rubbered up line.
Yeah, that's something they've been talking about as well, isn't it, Michael? Like the grip level's so low offline that pole position is on the inside, but on the dirty side of the track,
which is going to invite riders to swoop across the front of the
pack. Oh, yellow flag, sector 1. What's happened here at sector 1? Oops! And that is one of the gas that has gone down. I believe it's Augusto Fernandez. It is indeed. Augusto Fernandez has gone down on the track at turn 1.
In there. It's going to be a tricky one in turn 1. The riders are going to have to be ultra careful and look out for each other, but when does that happen in MotoGP?
and everyone, Michael, as you know, are so aware of what we're talking about, this narrow racing line. So everyone's like, I have to make the move now. Or
let's take a look how he did it then. So he's going to come down on entry, turn in, bottom down into first gear, switch it in towards the right, and yet the front dips away just on entry. Nothing he could have done there whatsoever. That's not his fault. That is not the lack of grip, but we've been having grip issues here all weekend so far, so it's that type of issue that keeps coming through and cropping up. He's picked the bike up actually and got going, so not bad. And now we're looking at Polo Spargo, his teammate, who's out there on the circuit right now. So not a bad run, a good run so far. Alicia Spargo, Maverick Vinales, Fabio Quartararo, Jack Miller, Jorge Martin in the combined times. And in this session as well, everyone else has improved. So every time that was set in yesterday morning's free practice 1 session has now been beaten in the free practice 2. And lap time cancelled for Johan Mir for not observing the yellow flag rule.
Who just missed out actually on Q2 yesterday. Are we going to get a look at it? Yeah, you can just see that line, can't you?
Yeah, that dot line means that's where it's sort of tearing up. And it's not a nice feeling that when the tyre goes like that. That's when you get a lot of off-throttle slides. When you place the bike into the corner, the rear wants to start coming round.
And that's almost the paradox of this circuit. Brad Binder said it yesterday. There's loads of grip online, but it sort of, he said he thought it was the tyre, Michael. He thought that maybe because of this casing, the combination with the tyre and this asphalt just, it wasn't right. Like there was grip, but then there wasn't. It was a really strange sensation.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear from Brad. Obviously, you think back to harder construction tyres when they came. Dovi used to all of a sudden unlock something more with Ducati in a previous era. So yeah, it does obviously lower the grip that's available, and I think Fabio Quartararo feeling like they've lost, or maybe even made disparity worse for them. So there's actually a little bit less grip available from the tyre. It manages better over distance, it manages the heat and the consumption, but the actual outright grip is probably slightly lower.
Here is Fabio Quartararo, fastest last year, remember? He was on pole position, and then race day came, unfortunately, for him. And the wet weather, and Miguel Oliveira came through, of course, to take victory in that one. He said, actually, it's still not so bad for us. Just the tyre is not going to work in our favour. And, you know, it's a flowing kind of racetrack. It's one that would have suited the Yamaha in every iteration up till now. It's just the punch out the corners, and it's not there.
What's interesting is when we spent the evening with Jack Miller and talking about how KTM have changed their motorcycle. They've made it basically longer and lower, and he was explaining to me and Gavi, he said, honestly, it's all about just getting the bike from A to B, point and squirt, and all the manufacturers now are building their motorcycles along those lines. That's what you've got if you want to win. And in the middle of all that mix is a Yamaha that still wants to flow, wants to carry corner speed. And
yeah, and Jack says the Ducati is a beast to turn. He said it's heavy. He said that's why Marco Bezzecchi's performance is even more impressive yesterday, because you've got to sling that bike around. You've got to wrestle with it.
Yeah, he said he couldn't believe how impressed he was with Bez having had his collarbone operated on Sunday. To fly here yesterday, arrive yesterday morning, jet-lagged. It's a long trip. It's 3 flights to get to this small island of Lombok.
Has Pecco Bagnaia been able to iron out the creases that he had with that Ducati yesterday? There's no doubt about it. It looks like Jorge Martin just takes the wrapper off his bike, gets it out of the box, fills it of fuel, and away he goes. It's like they're not touching it at the moment, and it's working everywhere we go.
Which is such a nice feeling. As a rider, as a crew, you found a sweet spot in the setting. You've got such a good base. You don't need to spend the weekend chasing something. You just work on yourself. This weekend, work on your line choice, work on putting the laps in, work on the soft rear tyre, and understand if it's a viable option for race distance tomorrow, because everything we're seeing again this morning, even Fabio Quartararo there, the left side is banding quite heavily.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Is it Bagnaia leans on the electronics that little bit more? Does he lean on those kind of performance parts of the Ducati, and Jorge Martin rides around things? I don't know. I'm trying to extrapolate out of things that aren't there, but Jorge's not having electronics problems from one track to the next.
Yeah, which when you watch Jorge's style, it's a little bit reminiscent of Mark in that smaller, but he uses his body to get the centre of mass even lower in the middle of the corner. So those comments from Jack are quite interesting, that the Ducati is a beast to turn. We've always said about how long it is, and obviously geometry-wise, a long bike takes a bigger arc to turn around a corner. So you look at the Yamaha, look at the Honda, they're much shorter, the wheels slammed up there in the swing arm. So yeah, Ducati are using an aero body to help the bike turn, but then they've got a rider like Jorge Martin extracting something more. How he rides the bike, head almost touching the curves in Catalonia, shoulder down. He is at the extreme point of body, as far out from the bike as he can get it to help the turn in the middle of the corner. It is a newfound riding style that is so impressive to watch. I only dream of getting down that low.
Yeah, it is, but it is also very physical to do that. So we're talking about this bike, obviously it's a heavy bike. Then you've got Jorge Martin with that extreme riding style, and we saw in India, it was a shortened race, and he was completely done. There was not one lap left in him. I think if there was another lap, it would have been incredibly dangerous, and it's a worry. But that's what he has to do to extract the most out of it. It's almost like he's having to be even more physical, put more effort into moving his body around the motorcycle. And this weekend, it's incredibly hot again. This morning, I'm stood out in pit lane with Susie, and I'm just stood there in shorts and a shirt, and literally you can feel the sweat running down your back. So it's going to be a tough one. Not in today's race, but tomorrow the weather forecast is exactly the same. So it's track temperatures of just think about this: track temperature of 60 degrees. Now if you go out onto the track and stand there and put your hand on it, it burns your hand. The ambient temperatures in the high 30s, it's humid. Honestly, it's such difficult conditions.
Is it worse than India or better than India? How do we compare those?
Yeah, difficult to compare because India was... It surprised all the riders. I don't think anyone expected the relentless nature of the sun. It seemed even hotter than here. Obviously, the humidity does give you some form of respite, I think, because there's a little bit more moisture in the air. But it's going to be tough. It's going to be equally as physical, in my opinion.
Just this morning, it feels just exactly the same. That's that's the best way I'd explain.
It feels, like the sun just burns, doesn't it? There's no clouds around.
Well, we're talking to locals. I've not had proper rain for about 7 months. I mean, it looks weird. It's like all the greenery of this island's disappeared, and it's like we're on the moon. It's just everything's burnt out. It looks completely different than last time we came.
It's going to be tough for Marco Bezzecchi, even in the sprint, isn't it? He dragged it through. He said, do you know what? Even qualifying is going to be hard. It might just be a couple of short bursts, but he says it is the most physical part of the weekend, pretty much.
When you go 10 tenths for your qualifying lap, you throw everything at it, so it's amazing that you can go a full 40-minute race distance and use the same amount of energy in a 2-3 lap sprint, but you forget to breathe, you throw everything at it, you grab the bike by the scruff of the neck, and it is it's like it is the 100-meter sprint versus a marathon tomorrow, so it's the same effect. You just use all your reserves and put it all on the line.
It will be worth keeping our eye on Jorge Martin, though, in the race.
I think
from the last 2 or 3 laps.
Do you think the sprint will be okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
The sprint.
That won't be a problem, but it definitely will play a part in it.
Bear in mind how it was shortened. I think there'll be 2 things, won't there? There'll be the physical factor and also the tyres. Will the softer option work? Will it have to be the medium? I think the medium.
Another yellow, sector 1.
Jack Miller's trying it now. And I saw Martin at the start of this session trying it, so I think they are all having to have a serious look, maybe because of that banding that we've seen.
Oh, and it is Miguel Oliveira. Sorry for the question there, Gav, about the graining on the tyres. It is Miguel Oliveira who's gone down at turn number 1. Just had a small downward crash on the entry. Probably similar to what we saw with Augusto Fernandez a few moments ago. But nobody else is here on improvement lap times with 8 minutes to go. For showing the timing, the full timing screen now we get up here in the commentary box. Nobody is on improvement lap times. Everybody just trundling around as Martin, 2 tenths down at the moment. Miller across the line, doesn't improve. Martin does. Martin does improve. Oh, and Miller does. Because it's a lap time cancelled for Jorge Martin for track limits. And now they've got to observe yellow flags through sector 1 as well.
Rung of the ladder as they rebuild this package with the newfound aerodynamics that need to work in unison with your electronics and engine. So, Miguel Oliveira, I think he's smart, he's a thinker, he's a good communicator, which is exactly what Honda need right now. They need someone with experience of both Aprilia and KTM in recent times. He could be a real gem for them, a proper asset.
Race winner, multiple race winner, of course, including here last year. Good in all conditions. It's just whether, again, he'd want a contract, and you'd probably want a longer contract, but you'd probably want an escape clause in your contract. It would be they'd have to pay a fee of some sort, a penalty that he'd have to pay to Aprilia. Yeah, there's lots to be decided there.
I mean, Honda have got Zarco over at LCR, which they can promote him into the factory team, but because what we experienced with Zarco at KTM when he went there, and we all thought, oh, that's a good signing, and it all went wrong. He didn't like the motorcycle, he had a few crashes, and essentially quit halfway through the season, which was, again, a really strange move. So I can't sit here and feel really confident that HRC will think, oh, right, well, we'll promote him into the factory team as the man to spearhead the design, the development.
I think Lucio Giacinello would prefer to hang on to him as well, because he knows he can do well, building his team around someone like Zarco. Yeah, that will all come out in the wash, I'm sure, as we ride on board with Fabio Quartararo. We talked a lot here about Ducati, about the battle. Of course, we mustn't forget, with all the Marc Marquez news, with the KTM news about Pedro Acosta coming in to replace Pol Espargaro, it's easy to forget there's 3 points in this championship still between Bagnaia and Martin. But it's the Aprilias who are dominating here. It's the Aprilias who are the favourites, and the Aprilias who look like they'll take the big points, at least in the sprint today. And it feels like a Barcelona weekend where we got that 1-2.
Yeah, Barcelona, Argentina, tracks with low grip, the Aprilia works. So a few rounds ago they were talking about struggles on braking, matching the Ducati, being precise, but on a track like this where you need to be ultra precise, staying on the clean line, the Aprilia's working, both Maverick and Aleix, making it look effortless. Obviously it's not, they're having to be as physical as any rider out there, but the bike just looks stable. It looks like it's designed for this racetrack. So yeah, I think I agree, both the sprint and the feature race tomorrow, I think they've got something.
Jorge Martin comes around the tight turn 16. That'll see some action today.
Just watch him, just how he works though with his body. All that is, everything. It's that extra little bit of effort per corner, per lap, compared to everybody else. Nobody rides like him. It's incredibly physical having to move around the forces, trying to force a bike.
It's a bit,
Did you see that
front
there, just hopping and skipping?
You know, Enea Bastianini's a bit like that.
Yes,
he had that similar kind of style, didn't he? But at the moment, he's just trying to recover fitness.
Yeah, and confidence and a bit of feeling and understanding. He's, when we spoke to Davide Tardozzi about it, or I don't know, it might have been Paolo Ciabatti, basically they were saying that with Enea, he's literally trying to get almost a base setting, believe it or not, for the 2023 Ducati. It's just never quite, obviously, getting injured in the very first sprint race has thrown him off, but from that moment on, he's never really become comfortable with the bike.
Pecco Bagnaia has to run it wide again. 4 minutes left in this free practice 2. Of course, these times not relevant for qualifying, which is coming up next, I will remind you, from 3:50 in the morning in the UK, so in about 15 minutes time, just under. And then, of course, we'll have Moto3 qualifying from just before 6 a.m.
Well, TNT will, we won't, as we come across. We're only licensed to show the races of Moto 3 and Moto 2, and even then they try and block us. So that's why they're on Twitch at the moment and airing live later. Hopefully we'll get something sorted for next year. Marc Marquez, 133.326, goes 16th at the moment, not improving that much as well on the times.
There is Enea Bastianini. Crash yesterday, another one who went down. There were a lot of crashes at turn 11 yesterday, which slightly worrying when that's a third gear fast corner.
Yeah, really fast. So many fast crashes, yeah, just in general yesterday. And again, when I was out on doing my lap, I've never seen so many, I think because the track's so fresh, so many crash marks, so many skid marks. Watch Jack Miller in the background. Oh, it's not going to show him.
Oh! Well, I mean, Miller had a moment, but not as extreme as Jorge Martin had.
And that shows it's everything we've just been talking about throughout this session. That's what happens. That's him trying to brake a fraction later into turn 1, but that meant he just pushed himself off that dark part of the track, the grip, and then he touched the ice. He went onto the dirty part, and it just literally folded on completely.
And that's not soft tyre that he was using, hard front, whatever. That is just track and getting off the narrow line.
It does look better on the run to the final sector. Turn 15 yesterday, if you went through it a little bit fast, got just a few inches too wide, it looked really treacherous. But today I've seen quite a few drift out there and have the confidence to lean it on in there. So obviously the clean line is widening ever so slightly this morning.
Going to be interesting, isn't it, when we get going in a race situation, is if it is a bit follow my leader, it's people getting sucked in, it's that turbulence effect, it's people being dragged into corners. If you want to make a move, you're going to have to get off the dirty line. Your front tyre pressure's going to go through the roof. It doesn't feel like the recipe for a classic.
I was just going to say that. It's the recipe for a first corner pile up. The problem is then straight after turn 1, you go into a really tight chicane. And we saw it in World Superbikes. They had exactly the same problems, if not worse. I think the World Superbike racing line looked even narrower.
I think Alvaro Bautista had a crash. I remember there was the Loris Baz, Alex Lowe's moment when slightly offline. Just these things happen. Did Johnny Ray have a little bit of something here as well?
There are lots of crashes. Yeah, in World. Van der Mark had a massive high side.
Yeah, let's hope everyone comes through unscathed. But you fancy, there'll be corners turn 10 will be one, I think, a bit of a pinch point, because it does really narrow down onto a line there.
But what's the answer? I was thinking as we were talking, what's the answer? Because the problem is, if in reality what we half predicting happens, well, that's a mess, isn't it, really? I mean, you could argue, going, well, hang on, we've had first corner crashes at quite a few races already this year, so what's different? But then if the race is, as I think it's going to be, very, very difficult to pass, well, then you argue, well, what we're doing coming to a track where we can't really
race
pass on.
Yeah.
How do we eradicate this problem?
Because it's not just about getting a big blower out there and blowing the dust off, because it's rubber. You need rubber going down, that's the thing.
Yeah, and honestly, it's a brand new surface, but we're close to the ocean. It does seem like there's dirt or sand, grit in the air.
Checkered flag.
It does always feels that way, but I remember Argentina year one. It literally was, you opened the throttle in the middle of the corner and the front tucked. It was so lacking grip, but that doesn't happen now. It's almost cured or aged. It does get better. So I hope the same for the Mandalika circuit, because we're on a beautiful island, a great racetrack, and you don't want that to be the stigma attached to the venue. I think it will evolve over time, but it's going to be tricky here on Sunday, Saturday afternoon as well. The sprint will be a little bit more attacking. People will take the risk up the inside offline. Points that are paid out aren't as big a prize, so yeah, I do see it evolving, but right now it is could create a follow my leader race tomorrow.
It's going to be very exciting to see, but the checker flag is out for this free practice 2 session. The qualifying 45 minutes, 30 minutes on the session, 2:15s for the 10-minute break equals 1:45. That's up next. Fabio Di Antonio goes 12th, 1:31.733. Augusto Fernandez on a lap time as well. Quartararo stays in 4th position, takes the checkered flag. Martin is going to top this free practice 2 session and the combined free practice times as well, meaning technically he's the fastest here this weekend. But he's taking it a bit slow at the moment, 3/10 off his own pace, so he's not going to go completely flat out straight away. There's really need for him to. He's just got to sort of take it his own time. Across the line then, Augusto Fernandez. No, he's backed up into the pit lane. Martin at 1:32.067. So it is, with everyone now taking the checkered flag, the session is over. It's Martin from Malaysia Spargro, from Maverick Vinales, Fabio Quartararo, Luca Marini, Johan Zarco, Franco Morbidelli, Jack Miller, Augusto Fernandez, Takiki Nakagami, Pecco Bagnaia is 11th. And then we get Fabio Di Antonio 12th, Marco Bezzecchi 13th, and Bastianini 14th, Brad Binder, Miguel Oliveira, Paul Espargaro, Ralph Fernandez, Marc Marquez, Johan Mir, and Alex Rins. Right, we'll be back shortly for all the action on Twitch. You don't have to do anything on YouTube. Live coverage is about to begin of qualifying for the Indonesian Grand Prix. We'll see you in a bit.